Chapter 13, on Beneath the Billionaire's Mask. Please ensure to watch all videos on this story sequentially as to follow up properly on this story. Brooklyn, 2 weeks later. Rain tapped softly against the windows. Eliana stood barefoot in the kitchen, wrapped in one of Damian's button-down shirts, her hair still damp from the shower. The apartment was quiet, too quiet for someone who'd lived in the eye of a technological hurricane. She stirred her tea absently, watching the clouds roll in across the skyline. This kind of quiet used to make her nervous. Now? It felt earned. Morning? Damian's voice rumbled behind her, low and a little gravelly. He wore sweats and a faded MIT hoodie that made him look infinitely more human than the man the tabloids still whispered about. She turned and smiled. You sleep? He slid his arms around her waist, burying his face in the curve of her neck. Define sleep, Eliana chuckled. You mean passed out from emotional exhaustion and stubbornness? Close enough. The new normal. They ate breakfast sitting on the floor, plates balanced on knees, no phones, no noise, just toast, eggs, and the occasional smile that lingered too long. Damian watched her in the morning light, no makeup, no armor. God, she was beautiful. Not just in the way people threw that word around, but in the way she existed, the way she had survived everything and still found a way to laugh, the way she cared about art and light, and the look in someone's eyes when they felt seen. I'm still not used to this, he murmured. Eliana tilted her head. What, normal? He shook his head. You, letting me in. She looked down for a second, then back up. You didn't give me a choice. No? You made it easy to fall, hard to land, and somehow worth staying. Afternoon sketches. Eliana's studio had taken over half the apartment now, canvas stretched against every wall, most unfinished, some raw and emotional, others soft. She sat cross-legged, a charcoal pencil in hand, sketching his profile from memory. Damian sat near the window, reading quietly, but he could feel her watching him, studying him. You know that's not how my jaw looks, he said without looking up. You want to be flattering or accurate, she teased. I want you to draw me the way you see me. That made her pause. Then softly she said, that's exactly what I'm doing. That evening, the rain hadn't let up. They lit candles instead of overheads and ordered food they barely touched. Instead, they danced slowly in the living room, barefoot on the rug, no music, just the rhythm of their breathing. His hand slid to the small of her back. She leaned into him, eyes closed. Tell me something you've never told anyone, she whispered. Damian was quiet for a long time. Then he said, I never wanted to be a billionaire. She pulled back slightly. What? I just wanted to build something that mattered, and then I got lost in proving it. She nodded. And now? I just want to build us. Her eyes shimmered. Good, she whispered, because I'm finally ready to be loved. He kissed her, slow and deep, like they had all the time in the world. And maybe they did. Midnight. They lay tangled in the sheets, limbs bare, skin warm. The candlelight flickered against the walls. Damian traced lazy lines down her arm. Do you think we'll ever stop being haunted? He asked softly. Eliana turned her face into his chest. No, she said, but I think we'll get better at living with the ghosts. He held her tighter, and for the first time in years, neither of them dreamed of the past. Morning light. 1 week later. The sun broke through the clouds for the first time in days. Eliana stood at her easel, a new canvas untouched, before her. Behind her, Damian brewed coffee in her tiny kitchen with the same level of intensity he once reserved for billion-dollar negotiations. She grinned to herself. You're hovering, she said. He turned, coffee mug in hand. I'm observing. She gave him a look. You're pacing. I pace when I'm nervous. Eliana raised an eyebrow. And what could possibly make you nervous? He stepped closer, setting the mug down, the warmth of his presence brushing against her. You got an email this morning? Her smile faltered. From who? He pulled his phone from his pocket and tapped it open. The Oslo Collective. They're hosting a featured international exhibit. They want you." Eliana's throat tightened. "I didn't apply." "You didn't have to. Someone did. Someone who leaked your pre-Wolf era catalog. They loved it." She stared at him. "You?" Damian shook his head. "Heart, with my blessing." She looked away, overwhelmed. "Eliana," he stepped behind her now, hands on her shoulders, voice soft. "This doesn't have to change anything between us unless you want it to." Tears stung her eyes. "You're giving me everything I lost." He kissed the top of her head. "I'm giving you back what you were always meant to have." Later that afternoon, rooftop memories. They climbed the rooftop of her apartment building with a blanket, takeout, and a bottle of red wine. The sun dipped low, streaking the sky with golds and bruised purples. Eliana leaned against his shoulder. "I was 7 when my dad left," she said, barely above a whisper. Damian stayed quiet, his fingers gently brushing hers. "My mom never said his name again. She poured everything into me and her work. But I think, deep down, she always blamed herself for the way he couldn't stay." She paused, then turned to him. "Sometimes I think I inherited that fear, that people I love will always find the door." Damian met her gaze, unwavering. "I know that fear." Eliana studied him. "Tell me." He sighed. "My mother was sick most of my childhood. My father, he buried himself in work. I learned early that love was conditional, that if I didn't build something, I wouldn't be worth staying for." Her hand reached for his. "I don't want to be built around," she said gently. "I want to be built with." He smiled, bittersweet. "That's the first blueprint I've ever wanted to follow." The invitation. That evening, Eliana sat alone in the studio while Damian took a call downstairs. The Oslo email still blinked at her on screen. They wanted 3 new works, something original, something raw. She stared at the blank canvas and began. Her strokes were jagged at first, unsure, then smoother, more fluid, more her. She didn't sketch the skyline or code overlays or the haunting grayscale faces she'd once been known for. She painted him, not the billionaire, not the mogul, not the man the world once feared, just Damian, in shadow, in light, and in her heart, the painting. 2 days passed. Eliana barely left the studio. The painting had become an obsession, not for perfection, but for truth. She hadn't told Damian what it was, though he caught glimpses. She always covered it with a linen sheet when he entered, playfully coy. He let her keep her secret. Some things needed to be hers first. On the 3rd night, she called for him. He came without hesitation. The linen had been removed. He stopped in the doorway, breath caught. It wasn't just a portrait. It was a map of him, of everything he tried to hide and everything she had quietly seen. It was Damian, raw and undone, one half of his face cast in light, the other in the dusk of shadow. There were microcodes hidden in the background like brushstroke ghosts, fragments of the EVA program, equations he once buried, now soft and blurred like memories melting into skin. His eyes, they weren't cold. They weren't guarded. They were his the way she saw them, the way she'd come to love them. He stepped forward, slowly, reverently. "Eliana," his voice caught. "No one's ever seen me like this. No one ever tried." The Oslo answer. That night, curled together beneath the sheets, Eliana rested her head on his chest. "I want to go," she said quietly. Damian kissed her forehead. "Then you'll go. I want you there." He smiled into her hair, always. But then a pause, a breath, the weight of something unsaid pressing in. "There's something I haven't told you," he murmured. Eliana looked up. "Okay." Damian sat up slightly, leaning against the headboard. "When Ava died," he began, "I buried myself in my work. But there was one moment I almost stopped everything." He took a deep breath. "I met her once, your mom, briefly, years before the project. I was just a nobody trying to get funding for an early prototype of what would become Wolf O. S. Eliana blinked. You never told me that." She gave me 30 minutes in a hallway at a neuroscience conference in D.C. She was kind, director, and terrifyingly smart. He looked at her. She said something I'll never forget. She said, "Build what heals, not what hides." and then she walked away. Eliana sat still, heart thudding. That night, Damian continued, I changed the core of the code. I didn't even understand why at the time. But now, I think maybe she knew, not what I would become, but what I needed to remember. Tears burned behind her eyes. You carried that all this time? He nodded. I don't know what it means, except maybe some part of her knew we'd find each other. Or maybe I just want to believe that. Eliana wrapped her arms around him fiercely. She'd be proud of you, she whispered. Of both of us. 3 days later, Oslo, Norway. The gallery space was clean and bright, nestled in the heart of the city. The air smelled of varnish and fresh linen. Eliana's work stood among global giants, but hers was the centerpiece. Blueprint of a Man Who Chose Light. That was the title. People stared at the piece. Some wept. Others just stood still as if they'd been seen. Damian watched from the corner of the room, hands in his pockets, pride and awe in every breath. She caught his gaze across the space. No words, just a nod, and the smallest, softest smile. The kind that said, we're here now. We made it. Together. Stay with us for more chapters and more amazing stories on this channel. See you on the next one. Thanks for watching.